Nobody's seen anything quite like it.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to revolutionize high school.
I believe we're the first in the nation to have both of them mobile because we listened to the districts and they said, hey, we don't have enough bus drivers. We don't have the gas. We don't want to take students out of school.
Yeah.
And I named the blog Little Miss Finance because I wanted to talk about money and personal finance in a young, female, fun way. You know, not your stereotypical what you think of a financial advisor or, you know, the financial industry as a whole.
The Leave Your Legacy show is brought to you by Brave Hearts TV. Brave Hearts TV is dedicated to bringing stories of resilience, courage, and hope to their viewers. Their mission, to inspire, uplift, and empower their audience by highlighting real-life heroes and their journeys. In partnership with Brave Hearts for Kids, you, the viewers, become catalysts for saving the lives of children facing pediatric cancer. You can start by simply downloading their network app on Roku or Amazon Fire TV. Please visit braveheartstv.org. Elevate with Robin. Elevate with Robin is a full-service brand marketing agency that specializes in developing purpose-driven brand identities. Elevate with Robin has the right blend of strategic thinking, creative courage, and commitment to elevate your brand with every interaction. Their mission? To empower brands to rise above their competition by creating powerful brand identities that resonate with their target audience. Visit elevatewithrobin.com. Hello and welcome to the Leave Your Legacy show. I'm your host, Kenyon Murray. And today we have some very special guests from Junior Achievement Eastern Iowa. Stay tuned for a great show. Please help me welcome Christine Landa and Dr. Nate Klein to the show. Thank you guys for coming on today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
Absolutely. So, you know, everybody wants to know how most of my guests got to the position that they're in. So we'll start with you, Christine. Give us a little bit of your backstory when it comes to your career at Junior Achievement.
It's a really unexpected journey. I was introduced to Junior Achievement in college, and I had an internship when I was at Mount Mercy University, then Mount Mercy College.
Go Mustangs.
Go Mustangs. And I worked at an international ad agency, Creswell, Munsell, Fultz, and Zerbel.
Are they still around?
CMF&Z, still around.
Okay.
And they had a board member on the Junior Achievement Board of Directors. And like many of our board members, generously do a lot of pro bono work for our organization to help advance the mission. And so they volunteered to do some pro bono work. I happened to be an intern at the ad agency in this gorgeous glass office with a computer. Back then, that was a big deal. And nothing to do.
Yeah.
And so they gave me the Junior Achievement account. And that's when I was introduced to the organization. I learned about it. There were so many opportunities to get involved. And it really became part of my DNA. It was almost intoxicating because empowerment of kids, giving them the life tools to be successful was something that really spoke to me. And so I got involved. And once that internship ended, I continued to do some pro bono work on my own. And they invited me to interview for a job. I interviewed for the job, and back in the late 80s, there were a lot of jobs.
Yeah.
And it was the least lucrative offer I had been given.
Yeah.
And the most daunting, because I didn't consider myself a fundraiser.
Right.
And I took it because I knew I would grow the most.
Yeah.
And there was something about Junior Achievement that was so special, and I couldn't move beyond it.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad I did, because I joined the organization in 1992, part-time before I graduated college. I became a full-time employee, and I think I've held every position in the organization, either by choice or by opportunity, if you will. But I've grown up in the organization, and I like to tell people jokingly, I've given birth to it, I've dated it, I've divorced it, right?
Yeah.
But it's been an incredible journey of personal learning and development, but an investment in the community that I haven't found in any other way.
Yeah.
And that has brought me a lot of fulfillment.
That's awesome. And Nate, your journey to Junior Team is a little bit different.
Yep.
Obviously, there's the connection with Mount Mercy, now University.
Yeah.
So tell the audience a little bit about how you came to be part of Junior Achievement.
Well, it was actually about 20 years ago. And so Christine was there, and Aaron, who now get to work with as well. And they said, hey, we've got this internship opportunity. So very similar. And as a sophomore in college, I was like, I don't know what I want to do with my life yet.
Right.
So why don't I go try this thing out? And there was a lot of energy, which you will see today as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
From Christine. And so I walked up to the third floor and got to intern with them in an accounting internship. It was super exciting. And I learned that accounting was not going to be my jam. So they allowed me to dabble a little bit into programs, and I started to understand what the mission was. And actually then started volunteering. And so there's a local high school, Metro High School. It's an alternative high school that I had an opportunity to then volunteer for one of the premier JA programs, the company program, which is basically how JA started, focusing on entrepreneurship. And I remember vividly, like I spoke to these students, and I was only 3 or 4 years older than them. And I was super jazzed. And I look out after 45 minutes and 3 of them were sleeping. And I was like, I'm not going to be able to do this JA thing. And 2 years later, really fell in love with the organization. The students started their own business. They opened up a shop downtown, and I just fell in love with what JA's mission was. Now, my career took me down south. I went to work for the Duck down in Georgia and South Carolina, got married down there, or actually back here, and had a great time, but I always knew I wanted to come back. And stayed involved volunteering with JA. I volunteered in college during my time down south, when I came back, when I worked at Mount Mercy. And then when I did decide to leave, there was this organization that had just been a constant in my life. And I don't know how many times Christine has told this story. I decided I want to leave without a job lined up, which my wife was in full support of.
Okay.
Love you, Jenny.
But
I left without having anything lined up. And I knew everything happens for a reason.
Right.
I think 2 days after I made my announcement, Christine reached out and said, hey, Nate, we're going to have coffee. Not, hey, would you like to? Like, we're going to have, and let's meet up. And she had talked, and we met that morning and talked about all the amazing things that were going on with the organization, from the basis of the kit-based programs and financial literacy and work readiness and entrepreneurship, and these other really exciting things that were going on. And she said, we're going to create this thing, and you're going to go interview for some other jobs. And then you're going to come work for us, which is kind of how
that's how she works.
That's how she works, right?
No doubt.
And sure enough, a couple of months later, after I explored other opportunities, I called her on FaceTime, and she was at her son's track and field event. And if you know anything about Christine, she had to remove herself a little bit because we were very excited that we were able to come together and get to work together 20 years later.
Absolutely.
And so it's been a really interesting arc, from intern to volunteer to MC to now colleague. And in all throughout it has been this mission of how do we help students in a community be both financially literate and ready for the world of work afterwards.
No, and I love it. You know, one of the things about you that I've learned is you are very straightforward. When you want something, you go after it. And you may not have maybe an exact plan on how you're going to get there, but you know you're going to get there. And that's what I love about you. But I think one of the most important things that you both have touched on is how JA not only is impacting youth, but how it's preparing them for the future. And in the world today, being able to look at it as being an entrepreneur or financial literacy, these are things that these kids need. So in your position as president, CEO, and everything else, what have you seen, maybe what's different today versus maybe when you started, and how the programs have to impact the youth? Because like you were saying, you were talking to kids and there were 3 of them sleeping. So in your role, how are you trying to keep things, whether it's new, energetic, engaging for the kids? I know there's a lot of different programs, but is that a challenge for you now as a leader of JA here in Eastern Iowa?
Kids have changed over the past 3 decades. I think the world around them has changed immeasurably, and their response to that has challenged them to grow and change differently. Kids aren't facing the same dilemmas and the same social environments that I grew up in, that you grew up in, that Nate grew up in. It's different. And so, yes, we have to evolve and adapt. We have digitized a lot of our content. It's very engaging in ways that it wasn't. It was more static historically. But one of the constants that has never changed is the incorporation of a volunteer mentor. Junior Achievement, for those that don't know, have for over 100 years have experiential-based programming to teach kids fundamentally about values-based behaviors, about the world of work, about financial literacy, about entrepreneurship, about life, and how to adult and be economically independent and have the power of choice and live their best lives. And that's really what we stand to do. But we do that through a network of community partners and volunteers like you and Nate. I volunteer annually. And I think that constant has always been rich and rewarding, but hasn't needed to change because it's the authenticity that kids are looking for. They really want that connective tissue to the world of work, to the adulthood mindset of, well, what's it really like outside of school?
Right.
How am I really going to use math in my everyday life? And why is this important? And why should this matter? And for someone that's not their teacher or their parent to tell them the why, that's meaningful. And so we're providing those types of aha moments in classrooms around Eastern Iowa every day. And for me, that's a beautiful thing.
And I want to go back to what you said, because you've been in where you've actually pivoted. You know, you as an intern, you're like, hey, I don't want to do the accounting thing. Do you feel that your journey and your experience is really suited to maybe connect with these kids today? Because you see a lot of that, like kids don't know what they want to do. I think there's more, I don't even know, like I think they're searching for more today, kids are. So do you feel like, so you feel like your experience through that and how you've pivoted through your professional career 100%. Allows you to connect with the kids?
100%. And I think what's interesting is, you know, I grew up, I'm an alum. So I remember putting the pens together on the assembly line. And in my household, my parents are great, but I didn't necessarily know what all other careers were out there. I knew that there was manufacturing type of opportunities because my dad, blue collar, maybe real estate. My mom worked in HR. And maybe there's some helper fields, and of course, professional athlete, but maybe I didn't happen for me for many reasons. But I think what was important is I started to get exposed through internships and doing JA to a lot of other opportunities. And we talk a lot about with our team about providing students choice-filled lives. And I think what's really interesting is even at such a young age, students start to see different opportunities. So when we bring big trucks to elementary schools and they can see like what it means to be a firefighter, or we can have an accountant come and talk about, hey, if you really like to zone in on work and you're really good at math, this is what it could look like. Because students these days, and even in my job at the university, they were asked by so many people, like, what are you going to do when you grow up? Like, what is this going to be? And so early on, we're trying to pigeonhole students into this, hey, you've got to follow this mold. And that is good for some students, and it's not for the rest. And so how do we provide students opportunities? Because college isn't for everyone.
Right.
I used to think that was the case, and it's not. I'm a first generation college student, and I realized that my parents have all done amazing things, including raising other good kids. I turned out okay. But how do we provide those opportunities? And that's really what Christine is talking about, these experiential learning, and then just opening up their eyes. Like, hey, there is such a thing as virtual welding, and you could get this career in the trades, even though your parents or someone in your family doesn't have it. Or you could be a vet, or you could work at this grocery store and do floral bouquets and frost ice cream. Like all of these things are available to you, and allowing them to see that early through Career Inspire or some of the other events that we do is really magical to see some of those aha moments of, oh, I could be a nurse. Right. Like I could do that thing.
But don't you also think there are, because of our digital age, there's so much more awareness of the breadth and scope of jobs, and they've changed and morphed. I think it's overwhelming for kids to pinpoint exactly what that path should be.
What that pathway should be. Right.
Right. I think it's a lot of pressure for kids. And if we can put a dozen different types of volunteer mentors in front of kids along their journey to challenge their thinking, to open up their mindsets to different thought processes, different examples of, and just challenge that status quo. Nate's right. I grew up, my dad was a judge, an attorney. My mom was a teacher. and both my grandparents owned their own businesses. Those are the jobs I knew.
Yeah.
Because those were the influences in my life. I didn't have a scope beyond that. So I thought I was going to be one or the other. I'm kind of a hybrid of all, if I'm honest. And I think that's what we need to do for kids is provide a myriad of opportunities for them to grow and learn so they choose their best path for themselves and they can be successful doing so.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as a board member now, one of the things that has been a big focus is how do we grow the volunteer pool?
Right.
And so, like you've said, it's so important that we have a strong volunteer pool. And I know there's been some suggestions by myself as how we grow that pool. But what are some of the things you guys are doing to help expand that? Because I do believe that a lot of the volunteers that show up in classes, though great, are maybe in positions that kids may not be able to see themselves in. And so we have to diversify who we look at having coming in. And so what's been the challenge there, and what are some of the things that you guys are doing to help grow the
It's
pool?
a great question. Statistically, kids learn by emulating those they identify with, right? And so if a child has a volunteer mentor in their classroom that they look like, they identify with, that they know, it will resonate.
That matters.
And stick, have a stickiness of content. They'll remember that experience far more. And that alignment is very, very powerful. Because of that, we have approximately 2,000 unique volunteers that we deploy into classrooms throughout all of Eastern Iowa.
Which still isn't enough.
And it's still not enough because the demand outpaces, thank you. The demand outpaces. There are a variety of ways that we have engaged our volunteer base in answering your question, parents. So if we can go to the parent population in the neighborhoods where these schools are, kids will identify with those that they live with and that they see in their neighborhoods. The businesses in their community that are around their school neighborhoods, absolutely. We go to a lot of the civic organizations that have a great representation across our industries. We are very intentional. If we have a program that focuses on trades, we'll go to the trades and try and find experts that represent the different facets of those different job functions. We're very intentional that way, but we're also looking for people that represent different sectors in our community, whether it's age or ethnicity or religion or it's job or gender. We're really trying to make sure that we represent our ecosystem. And so if someone has an interest, if they have an interest in empowering youth, if they have a child themselves, they can contact Junior Achievement and get involved that easily. But
and just share their story. And I think that's what's really interesting is our educators are doing an amazing job. And no matter how amazing they are, when you bring someone from the outside in, just to reinforce what they're saying, it speaks volumes to that.
Absolutely.
And so all of these things we're doing, we're actually hiring a volunteer coordinator to focus specifically on how do we get into those populations of students, maybe where we're disproportionately represented, and focus on that. And then one thing that a lot of JA areas are doing is figuring out, okay, how do we tap into some of the students that have maybe experienced JA as well? So I've been reaching out and some other colleagues to the local universities, talking with the education departments, because how amazing is as a first year education student that I don't need to create the curriculum because JA is providing it. And I can walk into a kindergarten classroom and test out, do I want to be a teacher? And then they become a rock star in the classroom because kindergartners love that. Or maybe they realize like, hey, that age is not for me. And I want to maybe try out fifth grade. And we have those opportunities. So working with the local colleges and universities that have specifically educators, but other students, like you said before, that want to give back and find more meaning. And then a cool new program that we're working on that other area offices have done as well is called High School Heroes. So these high school students in the district, and maybe we're working with someone at a Cedar Rapids Prairie who is a senior who went to Prairie View, and they can go back and volunteer in the classroom with the teacher that they have. And maybe they're wearing the jersey of the sport they play, and they become like these mecca, amazing. and the students are just gravitating towards that because they sat in those exact same seats. Right. So we're trying to identify different populations that would not only benefit the students we're serving, but would also benefit those people. Yeah. How great is it a senior can work on their presentation skills back in the classroom where they had their 5th grade teacher? Yeah. So trying to identify some more, because Christine is very adamant that we're not going to just become stagnant. Right. And we as an organization want to serve more students. And so how do we do that with more volunteers? Yeah, no, that's great. And it leads right into my next question about programming. And obviously that's a big part of what you're doing. And so what are some of the programs now that you're spearheading or that are on the horizon that you think are going to, one, continue to engage the students, and I guess in the other sense, like you're super excited about? Well, I think sometimes the programs that we've done for the last 60 years are kind of like, oh, they're the programs we've done. And they're still so exciting. Like I just went to a classroom a couple weeks ago and we're teaching kindergartners about needs and wants. And to see that spark in their eyes is just really amazing. So I think the exciting thing with our traditional kit-based programs is that we are now working with schools and they're trying to figure out, what does work readiness look like at an earlier grade? What does financial literacy look like? Because we have to teach it at some point. And instead of educators who are really good at what they do trying to make up curriculum, like we have that. That's our shtick. That's our thing. So there's a lot more deeply we can be with the schools, and they're starting to realize like, hey, they don't have to go out to Google and find other things to just create. Like there is something here that can be really powerful. So I think that's really exciting to figure out how to grow and get deeper in with districts. And then the decision that the leadership team made, and you as well, to make mobile some of our capstone experiences. There have been other offices that have tried to figure this thing out, but at the 5th grade level, to be able to take a city to a school is really special. So JA Biztown, JA Finance Park, I believe we're the first in the nation to have both of them mobile, because we listened to the districts and they said, hey, we don't have enough bus drivers. We don't have the gas. We don't want to take students out of school with a physical facility. So can you bring something to us? And I think the team was like, we're just going to make this up. And so we have 2 sweet vans that are JA branded that we bring after 5 to 10 weeks of lessons are done, and they learn about what it means to be a citizen at 5th grade. They elect a mayor. They select who the DJ is going to be and the CEO of the bank. And then they come and they run the city. I mean, did it in your backyard. It was awesome. And absolutely. It's such a cool experience because we go to their backyard, but we transform their gymnasium. And these students get to run a town. And then they go back and talk to their parents about payroll at 5th grade. Like I wasn't talking about payroll until I was actually getting paid. But they get to pick the playlist for the city, and they get to be the mayor and make proclamations. And those hands-on experiences are memories that people will never forget. And in fact, I think you brought it up at a board meeting once that you had some girls come to your basketball camp. And they were like talking excitedly about school because of this experience, right? Yeah, absolutely. It was at Creek, I believe. That was where we had it. So, and that's when you know you're impacting the kids, when they come and just out of the blue, like, cause I stopped in and saw them, and they're like, this was so awesome. They're just kind of telling me about everything that they had done that day. And I was like, wow. Like they get to be the employee and the consumer and understand maybe why it's difficult for their parents to say no sometimes. Like you can't buy all the things. Right. And those are the exciting things that are in the minutia of what we're trying to teach. But those mobile units, we're also the first in the nation to bring this to the college student. And so earlier this year, we went back to our alma mater and we launched JA Finance Park. And so students in a personal finance class were taught for several weeks about personal finances. And I remember when I stepped onto a college campus, like the first thing that I saw was a table that said free credit card. All you got to do is sign up and you get this free t-shirt. And I was like, oh, it's a t-shirt that says college spelled with a K. Like how ridiculous is that? I was like, I want a free t-shirt. But I did, like we talked about money when I was growing up, but I didn't realize that was going to impact like my credit score. Right. So we took JA Finance Park, which is typically for middle and high school students, and we partnered up with Mount Mercy and said, hey, we can adapt this to you. And that's exciting because now the students got to go to this pop-up city again, and they got to walk through with mentors and talk about life decisions right after college. Like, what are taxes?
Yeah.
I'm not taking home $40,000.
Right.
What does insurance look like? How should I invest? Compound interest is a thing that I should take advantage of. And then when I get to another stage, daycare, that's a thing.
Yeah.
This costs some money.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that bonus in a few years when my kids are growing out of it. And then when you get to retirement, like, okay, what decisions I could make? And they could physically do it with technology and make those decisions. Because when JA opened up the after K-12 market, the 18 to 25, I think that's really exciting because they didn't get all the information when they graduated high school.
Right.
And so how can we provide that? So the kit-based programs are exciting. The experiential learning is really exciting. And then this 3DE thing that I think we're going to talk about is transforming high school education. So there's just so many really cool things from the basic of needs to wants to how do you talk about competency-based learning that we're doing.
Yeah. No, I know for a fact, I don't think they teach enough of financial literacy in college.
No.
And that's one of those things that we've continued to learn about. And obviously as things happen and kids grow and now you're trying to educate your kids on the same thing, like it's an ongoing process. It's an ongoing process.
Yeah.
You know, I went to college some years ago. However, I think it still applies today. In Missouri, I go to the Walmart with my roommate and we're checking out. And I check out first and I'm watching her and she's writing a check. And back then, that's what we did.
Yeah.
And she wrote a check, she shut the register, and we walked off. And on the way to the car, I said, Kelly, I said, how do you know you have enough money to cover that check that you just wrote? I said, you didn't write or reconcile anything in your register.
Yeah.
And she said, what do you mean?
What?
What do you mean? She goes, I still have all these checks.
Oh my
I still got money.
I still have money. It was the implication. Nobody ever thought to tell her, and she never thought to ask, but you have to put money in an account, whether it's a debit card or a checkbook, in order to draw off of that. And I was just horrified. I grew up with a different mindset and always, as an accounting major, reconciled my register. So I knew exactly how much money I had and if I could write a check on that account.
Yeah.
She had a completely different mindset and grew up with two parents who worked outside the home that were very professionally successful.
Right.
They never thought to tell her. And behind the scenes, they're just throwing cash in her account. She's just writing checks blindly. And I thought, but that is indicative of kids don't understand money and how money works.
We don't spend enough time talking about it at home. Like we're talking about all these other things, the nutrition and being active and the values.
Sports.
And we forget sometimes about the financial literacy.
Yeah.
Which affects everyone.
Oh, we're guilty of it as well. You know,
Absolutely.
You look at our situation with now 2 boys in the NBA and from a standpoint of getting their credit, you know, creating a credit score, like we were so locked in on everything else when it came to their basketball or academic career that we didn't sit down and talk about those things or even do it. Now, Keegan was a guinea pig for Chris.
Perfect.
We've done a better job with Chris, and he always, that is so funny because he'll say, who has a better credit score than that? Keegan or I, and I'm like, you kind of do right now. So even doing those things and having kids that people view as successful and those kind of things, we're in that process. No, we're in that process now of continuing that financial literacy, whether it's through us or through our financial advisor. But we're guilty of it too, that we do that. And I made enough mistakes that they've learned from those. But you're absolutely right. We're so focused on everything else, we don't even talk about that.
Life is busy.
Yeah.
It's hard to balance it all. And this is one of those incredibly important components that affects everybody.
Absolutely.
Everybody.
Yeah. And I'm the type of guy that loves to host a budget meeting at my house that my wife usually attends. And we're very good with money.
Yeah.
But then the translation to our 8, 7, 2, and 1-year-old, which is why I wanted to make sure that JA was in the classroom at their schools, because then it's focused time to talk about this thing.
Yeah.
And that's the focus time that the programs bring is, okay, now we're going to focus in on what is important and how do you build upon that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Elementary and beyond.
Yeah. Well, 3D, very exciting.
3DE.
Very exciting. So give us a little bit, Christine, just the inspiration for 3DE its importance and where you see it impacting JA moving forward.
Nate's talked a lot about our classroom programs, our capstone experiences, and if that weren't all enough, post-pandemic, along with our colleagues, we've had an opportunity to sit down with our academic partners, the executive team at our schools, and really talk about how things have changed. Where are the gaps? Where are the priorities? How have your strategic goals shifted? And how can junior achievement play a role in supporting those initiatives? And as we continued to do these listening sessions, trends started to emerge. And the trends, the gaps, the opportunities could be solutions like our capstone experiences, but there was this high school space that really work readiness and some of the competency-based skills, there's just a gap. 2015, down in Atlanta, Georgia, a colleague of mine named Jack Harris, who runs JA Georgia at the time, met with a blue ribbon panel of community leaders and educators. And they had some daunting challenges in the Atlanta schools, and they wanted to fix some things. And so they came up with a program. It's 3 dimensions of education, or 3DE. And they said, let's take the best of experiential learning, the best of junior achievements mentorship, and let's look at community partners and maybe case-based methodology, and let's put it together in a framework in a high school, and let's test our hypothesis that this could really change the way kids learn, lead, and live. And it has. And so we've watched across the network in junior achievement a transformative change happen at the high school space through 3DE. They've taken the best and rich of all of it and overlaid a traditional high school. And they've taken kids who had truancy issues, who had risk of dropping out, who weren't assimilating into the workplace. And statistically, that has changed those outcomes for the good. And as we continue to look in Eastern Iowa of engaging kids, our kids are amazing humans with endless possibilities and a lot of hopes and dreams, but perhaps not a pathway. And so trying to find ways for them to plug in and to own their journey, we thought 3DE was a solution. So we started talking about it as an opportunity, and we had several superintendents say, I need to know more. And as we continued to grow and learn together, we had several say, we want to bring this to our schools. Yeah. This is an unduplicated opportunity for kids. And so we're going to go into a little bit of the curricular why for Nate, but it's really a response to our educators and what they're seeing that students need to be citizens of the future and be their best family person, their best employee or business owner, but best community citizen and leader. And so we said, well, why not?
Yeah.
It had never been done across the network in a community of our size. And while we've never seen a barrier we haven't overcome, we didn't let that hinder our outlook on this either. Yeah. So there are about 50 3DE schools across the country. And here in Eastern Iowa, the first 2 in Iowa will be in Cedar Rapids and in Alburnett. Cedar Rapids Prairie and at Alburnett High School. Yeah. So we've got the Pirates and the Hawks that are both going to be launching a 3DE school in August of 24.
Wow.
It is incredibly exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, I know that you can just see the excitement on your face. And I think, not only, Nate, for you, one, how I really want to put this is, each organization going to have to take, JA Eastern Iowa is going to have to take a lot of ownership of it to make sure that even in these first 2 schools that is pulled off. So how are you going to implement it?
Yeah.
what do you need that you don't have?
Yeah.
But I guess more than anything, just how do you see this impacting the first two schools that you guys will be putting it in?
Yeah, I think so. I'm a Prairie grad.
Yeah.
So I'm super pumped. And Christine.
And I'm an Albertette grad.
So
I'm a Prairie
pretty
parent.
so we're very excited about the schools that we're partnering with.
Yeah.
And I think as a father as well, I'm starting to ask the question to my kids, like, hey, what'd you do at school today? Mm-hmm. And sometimes the answer is, I don't know. Or I'm hearing from others as we're talking in classes, like, okay, how will I apply this to life? Or why do I need to learn this?
Yeah.
And I think 3DE is that answer to that question. When parents start to ask, students are going to respond with some excitement. Mm-hmm. They're going to see the learning that they're doing, that the educators are doing an amazing job, be able to take like, oh, this is how I apply it because I did it right now. Mm-hmm. And the way in which we're going to do this, well, first off, we have an amazing 3DE director, Dr. Dominique Brooks, whom you know, and she is so passionate about providing equitable opportunities, exciting equitable opportunities for students. And so her passion just really shines through. And then we're going to hire people. We're not going to just rely on the educators to make up what these cases look like and figure out how to deliver. JA and 3DE National have said this is so important, and we want to make sure that this is done right, that we're going to hire people to put them in the school to support the educators. Yeah. So the first thing is getting the right people on the right seats of the bus. And so we're excited. We're a part of the interview process now to find these amazing educators and people that are going to model and implement to be there with the educators to bring them along. And so having those educators have that opportunity to see what it's like, and then providing them with the tools, because in order to impact the students, the educators have to be on board. And what every 3DE school has seen is not only is it impacting students, reducing their absenteeism, increasing their graduation rates, it's inspiring the teachers to stay from a retention, to get more engaged.
Yeah.
And if
Love
you have,
their job.
if you have educators that are getting re-engaged with that, then the students will be engaged. So our job is to find the right people first to help support this, and then find the right partners. We're in the process right now. When you ask, like, what do you need to make this happen? We need the community to be able to be involved, to identify how do we build out local cases. Mm-hmm. So the long and short of it is, every 5 weeks, these ninth graders are going to experience a case. They're going to launch a case. They're going to analyze the company and the organization. They're going to work with mentors. So we're bringing back that JA special sauce to engage with them in that third week. They're going to put together a presentation in week 4 and pitch that idea that they might have. And then in week 5, those mentors are going to come back, and we're going to have our finalists present to them as if they were presenting to the business, which they would be. Yeah. And so finding partners to build local cases. We've got some on board already that we're really excited about, to have real problems that students can put their hands on and say, this is how I'm going to use geometry, right now in the moment. Or Lord of the Flies makes sense. And now I've got this critical thinking competency on top of it to think about, and now I can relate it to what my work life might be. Yeah. So we've got 3 national partners that we have, and then we'll have 3 local partners, and that will happen both at the 9th and 10th grade. Yeah. And so identifying businesses and organizations and just humans that are excited about reshaping and re-engineering education, that's what we're in need of. Yeah. And so to take the energy that we know we have and really rally people around it as well, to just lay right on top of the amazing things that the schools are doing, these competencies, these 21st century skills, these real life applications, that's what's going to be super exciting. And the community buy-in, the community partnership, and the district partnership is really what we need to make it happen. And just energy and excitement. Like, we need stickers, we need branding, we need all the things to create this FOMO, right? Like we want to make students feel like maybe if they're not a part of it, they're missing out on something that's really cool.
Right. I think it's really cool. I think, the partnership part of it is key, because you're talking about taking a program and overlaying it with regular curriculum. Yes. And so you have to have an educational system, educational leaders in that school that understands the importance of what 3DE can bring, because that's the one thing I continue to hear is when you talk about retention or truancy, things like that. How are we engaging kids? Because things have gotten stagnant when it comes to traditional high school teaching. I mean, I see it.
Yep.
You know, my daughter's a senior in high school. You know, both your kids are in high school. You're not there yet.
Yeah.
You'll get there.
Hopefully.
But that's the thing, like, there's got to be something different. And I think on both sides, whether it's, you know, inspiring or getting the students excited, or like you said, the teachers excited, it's got to come from an administration that understands the importance of this moving forward. And so that in itself is so important when it comes to having the right partners in order for this to work. And I think, you know, obviously you start with two good schools that have already embraced a lot of what JA does here in Eastern Iowa.
They're comprehensive partners.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And so that's what we have to look for.
And Dr. Dybel are so like bought in, and their principals and leaders are like, this is exciting for them. And they want to travel to see other 3D schools because they know that this will transform what that experience is going to be.
Absolutely.
It's an unduplicated instructional model.
Yeah.
Nobody's seen anything quite like it.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to revolutionize high school.
Yeah.
This is just the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, really excited. I mean, obviously, as a board member who you pretty much told me that I was going to be a board member, I'm really excited.
It's a little more subtle than that. I wasn't going to take no for an answer, if I'm honest.
Once again, I know. So
we're going to be best friends. I think I started with that. We're going to be best friends.
Yeah. No, I am. I'm really excited as well because I think this, like you said, is going to change the landscape of education, even if we do it school by school.
One child at a time.
We have to. And if you can impact one kid, that's the important part of it. It means everything. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm excited.
One future is brighter. It's worth it.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank both you guys for coming on today. Like, this has been so educational for not only me, but our viewers. And
I hope so.
We'll be right back with another guest who is also going to impact JA through her volunteerism. We'll be right back.
Thanks.
Welcome back to the Leave Your Legacy show. And our next guest is someone who definitely took a pivot when it came to her professional career. Very energetic. I have to tell you that I know your partnership with JA is mutually beneficial. So please help me welcome Malia Gudenkauf to the show. Malia, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me. And just want to say, I'm honored to be part of an episode with such intelligent leaders that I look up to. So I'm just happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, one thing we like to do is, we want you to give our audience your backstory. And I think, like I said, it's very unique. But yeah, just tell us a little bit about where you're from, grew up, college, those kind of things. Absolutely.
So born and raised as an Iowan, born in a tiny little town, Swisher, Iowa, graduated from Prairie High School. Very family-oriented, Iowa-oriented. I have a couple sisters. They're my best friends. Just like really homegrown. Went to Prairie, then went to the University of Northern Iowa. So stayed pretty local, studied business there. And that's really where my story pivots a little bit in a way. But graduated from there, went to work for Collins Aerospace, really respectable company. Had a great job lined up with them. But along that time was also very passionate about learning more about financial literacy and educating myself. And so was doing a little bit of a side hustle of teaching financial literacy in my own way online and sharing my journey. And that culminated into a big pivot in my career where I left to do that full time. So jumped right into work a little bit, but I like playing pickleball. I love to travel. All the other good things outside of work.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, definitely with all the pickleball places popping up, we're going to have to learn how to do that.
It's so fun.
Yeah.
It's so easy to
That's what I hear. That's what I hear. So you talk about pivot. So I really want to focus there. Like, when it comes to financial literacy, which is where you're at now, was that something that was talked about in the home a lot? Because we're talking with our other guests, and that wasn't something that we talked a lot about because we're so focused on all the other things. So how did financial literacy play a part in your upbringing?
I always say, like, I grew up in a home where it wasn't talked about, but the more I realized and can reflect, I definitely learned from watching my parents' actions. So it wasn't necessarily, hey, I had a dad who was sitting me down saying, this is what a Roth IRA is, you need to invest in it. But very much watched their actions and how those decisions were in line with their values. So I say I didn't grow up in a family that really talked about finance because outwardly we didn't.
Right.
For me, I had this epiphany at UNI. I was a senior. I had my job lined up with Collins Aerospace, and I was graduating with a degree in finance. Yet I knew nothing about personal finance, which is also mind-blowing to me, right? So there was a guy on campus at UNI who was offering free financial literacy classes to the community and UNI students. So it was a lot more adults, I would say, from the community. And I had seen these flyers for 4 years that I was at UNI. It was in my senior year. And finally I was like, you know what? I have this job lined up. Like, I should go to those classes. That feels like a resource that I wouldn't like find in the real world. Right. So I went to those classes, and I went to the first one, and I was mind blown. And I was like, wow, this is all really important stuff that I've never talked about anywhere, not at home, not in my career or my job so far, not with my friends. And so I went to every single class that he had. He had 2 classes, each for 10 weeks. And I just learned and consumed all of the information possible. I started reading books, and for lack of a better term, I just became addicted to this information because it was so important. It's never leaving us. Everyone has to deal with money and finances. And unfortunately, we're not taught it in so many aspects. JA does amazing things, but it's a very small piece of the greater picture. And so became obsessed with personal finance and self-educating myself and learning and doing and just sharing that along the way is kind of where the financial literacy piece for me in my life started, I suppose.
Okay. Yeah. So you're getting all this information, and you feel you have to share it with a lot of people. So how'd you get into, you said you did it on, you shared online and things like that. Did you start a podcast or something like that? Like how were you sharing?
It started with me emailing my mom and my sisters, be like, did you know? And they're like, Jesus, Malia, chill. But so from there, I was doing and I was succeeding. I paid off $20,000 in my student loans in 10 months. And I was like, wow, okay, what I'm learning, I'm implementing, it's working, I'm finding success. And I did just want to talk to everyone about it. So that was the year 2019. I was like, Google University, I'm going to figure out how to start a blog. So that's where I started. And I named the blog Little Miss Finance because I wanted to talk about money and personal finance in a young, female, fun way. You know, not your stereotypical what you think of a financial advisor or, you know, the financial industry as a whole. I just wanted to bring a different perspective to it. So I started with a blog, and I was like, I'll just share what I'm doing. And instead of me emailing things to people, they can come and listen, or they can come and read if they want. So it started there, and then that morphed into posting on Instagram, creating visual content there, which is now video content, now TikTok, all of that good stuff. So at first I was like, because no one's doing this. Now there's so many people doing it. And there was then, you just weren't in that world yet. But yeah.
Well, that's awesome. I think, you know, sometimes we get this knowledge and we don't share it. And you were just like, okay, I'm gonna get it out to the world because there's gotta be other people that need to know this. And so, you know, kudos to you for doing that. But that turns into you being in a classroom teaching, right? So now, like, okay, how did the adjunct professorship come up?
Okay, so when I tell people what I do with personal finance, financial literacy, I start saying, you know, I do one-on-one coaching, I'm a speaker, I'm a teacher. I'm like, anything personal finance, the conversation is happening, I want to be a part of it. So when I transitioned from my career at Collins, which I spent 4 years doing, and I was doing this on the side, it got to the moment of, okay, everything's great at Collins, but I just want to give this a shot full time. I very much live in, I'd rather do it now, and if I fail, great, but then I won't have regret, right? That's how I make most decisions. But at that time, I was working one-on-one with individuals via Zoom, right? Okay. I was posting content. A young female was like, hey, similar position. I have a job. I have some student loans. Can you help me create a budget, create this plan? So it was very much like fitness coaching, but financial literacy. And then I really entered the speaking world from there, where I was partnering with businesses to come in and host a lunch and learn or professional development seminars focused on financial well-being. So I had those things rolling, and that's really where I pivoted for my career. And through all of that, networking, building relationships, meeting people in the community, I met a guy who taught a class at Kirkwood. He was like, you should come in and speak to my class. I was like, okay. Then I was like, hey, how could I do this? And he introduced me to someone. And so it was really just like a networking snowball that led to them needing an adjunct professor or instructor for personal finance related classes. And I was there and in mind for them. And so that led to that. And now, I'm teaching a couple classes at Kirkwood Community College around personal finance. I just came from that class, actually.
That's awesome. That's so awesome. But once again, it shows we talk about networking. Networking is very important. I think
everything.
young people need to understand that, how
everything.
important it is, because sometimes you don't know what is out there, but someone's like, hey, I have this or I have that. And so networking has been huge, obviously, for you.
It has, yeah. And you don't have to have any ulterior motive isn't the right thing, but meeting people, going for coffee, because your network will grow like wildfire, and you don't know what you don't know, right? That person could connect you to someone who's like, hey, I want you to meet, and you just don't even know. So it's so important to build relationships and keep those tight and build that network. So.
Absolutely. So let's go back to JA. So, you were saying, off camera, like JA is kind of interwoven in this whole story for you. So what are your memories of JA, and what do you see, or how is your now partnership with JA? How's that going to continue to grow?
We were saying off camera, I felt like JA for me has been like an invisible string since elementary to now, because I feel like I'm a walking epitome of JA with their mission of entrepreneurship, financial literacy, career readiness. All of that is really what I embody. I have vivid memories of JA in elementary school. Probably 4th grade is the first time I remember one of my friends, his dad was teaching JA, and just the content and the way that it's presented, it's so hands-on, it's so fun, it's so exciting to do something outside of your regular curriculum with someone's parent, whatever it might be, but introducing us to the concepts of entrepreneurship or starting a business. I just got done teaching JA, volunteering in a 1st grade classroom, and I came in, and when you're not in the school, like, I don't know what 1st graders know or don't know, and so I said, I'm an entrepreneur, and a couple minutes later, they're like, what is an entrepreneur?
Yeah.
And then a couple weeks later, that was our vocab word. And they said, that's what you are. And I said, yeah, do you remember what my business is? You help people save money. Yeah. Anyways, I'm diverting. But vivid memories of JA growing up, and the impression that it left on me of entrepreneurship, financial literacy, that spiraled into, in college, I wanted to volunteer again. So I went back into a classroom while I was at UNI. I continued to do that to this day, and then had an opportunity to join the organization on their new community impact board. So everything that they embody, I feel I do as well. And it's such a great organization.
Yeah. So thinking about that, that we talked about how important it is to have the right volunteers, the right community leaders. How do you feel your now profession, as opposed to being a side hustle, how do you feel like that can not only engage the students that you volunteer in the classroom with, but how do you think what you do can inspire those kids?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think students always get really excited for show and tell isn't the right word, but seeing someone in a profession in the real world that's not their teacher, and hearing what they do. And I think since mine ties so closely to the content that JA presents as far as financial literacy, for those young students is just exciting in general. But at the older ages, I mean, personal finance, financial literacy is tied into everything. And providing you opportunity, which is why it lights a fire inside of me, because it's not just about saving money or investing, whatever it is. It's about creating future opportunity for yourself to live the life that you want. And that's something I feel like through school, through JA, I've always known that I just want to live a little bit of a different life. I don't know how to communicate it, but it's just I just don't want to be normal. I want to do something different. Right. And that opportunity all stems from having this financial literacy education, and being able to play off of that and allow, yourself to do different things. So I think sharing that journey and what I've done and how I've left my corporate job and I've taken a little bit of a pay cut to do this. And all of this is in part of this financial education becomes inspiring to individuals to see, okay, it doesn't have to be exactly that, but I could do whatever I want if I take care of some of these things and recognize how important this is today.
Yeah. That's awesome. Now, I want to say this is real world too, and I know it wasn't anything we talked about, but I want people to understand you're living your passion right now.
Yeah.
but how scary was it for you to step out?
God. It was so scary, and it's still every day I'm still scared. It was August of 22, so a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
Nothing will ever prepare you for making a jump like that. But for me, it all comes back to the financial foundations. I saved some money to help that fear. Mm-hmm. I also just recognized where I was at. And for me, that was being a single individual without kids, without a whole lot of responsibility beyond myself. Right. So it was kind of one of those, it's never going to get easier. And I think no matter where you're at, it's probably fair to say it's never going to get necessarily easier. So prepare yourself how you can now. Yeah. But yeah, very scary, but thankful for the things that I had accomplished to allow that risk to feel a little bit less. Absolutely.
No, I think that's important because people see the end result a lot of times, like, oh, I want to be that. I want to be that. I remember being in class, and I can't tell you how many times I've had junior high or high school kids say they want to be an influencer, right? Right. So going to be an influencer, like they see the person on, whether it's Instagram, TikTok, or whatever it is, but they don't understand what it took for that person to get there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of scary steps. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of uncertainty, but to get there and to get through that, then you end up where you are, where you're thriving, and that. So we don't ever want to make it seem like, hey, this is easy, but it also comes down to the people that support you. Yep. And then understanding like you had such a, like you said, a strong foundation when it comes to doing it. So, we always want to be real.
Yes.
But that's one of those things, like you just have to know that those times are going to come.
You do. Be prepared financially, have a good head on your shoulders. Yeah. Don't make a out of whack decision. And I think on that note too, just life lesson is we see everyone's life from the outside and we know nothing what's happening on the inside. And this is what I preach with finance, right? It's just the way someone looks doesn't mean they're rich or whatever it is. When you're comparing yourself or you want to do all those things, you're only seeing such a sliver of that person you're comparing yourself to, and know that they are facing their own battles as well. It's not always, the grass is not always greener. So just always take that with a grain of salt and some grace to know that you're seeing typically the highlight reel of their life, and be careful how you're putting yourself up against them.
I love that. We talk about comparison all the time. As a basketball coach, that was one of the things we talk to our athletes about. So anything new for Little Miss Finance? I mean, are you growing? Are you adding people? Or is it just going to be just the Malia show, from here on out?
It's been a hustle. It's been hard. Yeah. It's just me as of now. I would love to grow and outsource and scale in all the ways to pass off the things that I feel like I'm not great at. I am forever trying to find a balance between all the things, right? One-on-one coaching, speaking, teaching, creating content, and then enjoying life outside of work. As much as it is my passion and pretty much my identity at this point in my life, I also enjoy things outside of financial literacy, like travel, spending time with family, all of that good stuff. So right now, things are growing and they're on their way. I'm feeling the momentum, but it's also right now just a season of still figuring it all out, which I feel like I forever will be, but just finding balance between, okay, I have so many things I could do. What are the things that I really want to go after and focus on instead of doing a little bit of everything? Yeah. So to that answer, I'm just still trying to figure it all out, if I'm being real.
Yeah, I'm 50 and I'm still trying to figure it all out too. So don't worry about that. But I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. I think your story is going to inspire people. And that's really what this show is about. This show is about inspiring people to, one, think outside of their own perceived limits. And I think by doing that, then you really can unlock your true potential. Absolutely. So I want to thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I want to thank all of our guests today, Christine Landa, Dr. Nate Klein, and Malia Gudenkauf for joining the show. I'm your host, Kenyon Murray. Let's keep connecting. Iowa Sports Supply. Iowa Sports Supply in Cedar Falls, Iowa has all of your school sporting goods and corporate business apparel needs. Anything from jerseys, sports equipment, to online fan apparel stores. Remember to check out their website at iowasports.com or give them a call at 319-268-0125 and ask for Alex. This podcast is sponsored by Storyline Multimedia. Storyline is an Iowa City-based media company that specializes in creating high-quality video, photo, and audio production for local businesses. They also work with college athletes and connect local business with NIL opportunities. They also produce a number of hit podcasts, including this one. So if you're interested in sharing the story of your business with the world, contact them today by visiting StorylineMultimedia.com. And remember, Your story matters.